So people have asked us, what has inspired us to sail around the world? You can answer that one.
Well, basically, we've always been very keen on travelling, and the only downside of travelling between countries is you normally fly on aircraft and spend a lot of time going through airports and then living out of a suitcase, basically. Checking into hotels for a couple of nights, unpacking, repacking, and moving on. Where with a Seawind 1160, you're self-contained. You move in your little apartment around the world, and on board you can bring your hobbies. We're very keen on fishing, snorkeling. We have a power snorkel, or as the Americans call it, a hooker, and we tend to read a lot of books, and then we go ashore and then look at different cultures and eat out occasionally, restaurants, and just the general sightseeing. Come back to the boat and you're still sleeping in your same bed.
We purchased one of the questions was what inspired us to sail around the world. We had bought a boat which we actually could not afford to just leave in a marina, so we thought, no, we've got to use it. We didn't look at it as one big adventure, just sailing off around the world. We just looked at it as each leg as it came along, and we were able to do this because we'd retired, so we just rented out the home we own, and that helped us with our income. Why did we choose a Seawind 1160? It's a great size for a couple, and we love the layout of it. Very convenient and very easy to live on. We weren't looking at something for the whole family because we knew that we've only got 2 children, but one's married with grandchildren. We weren't looking at something that would fit them all the time. It was mainly just going to be the 2 of us, and family at times, and friends come along. And also the other thing we really loved about it was that we could actually, everything in the Seawind can be done from the cockpit. And as we were really novices to this, starting out. So we found from a safety aspect, with all the sheets and lines and everything running back to the cockpit, that was a real plus for us. She's very strongly built. The cupboards and everything's been molded in. And then another thing is we have a son in a wheelchair, and he's been to join us from time to time. So we just we found that really convenient. He could actually get on and off it himself. The fact that the door opens up, right up, gave him plenty of room to move around, and she's very comfortable.
Excellent. Sorry, I dropped out there for a second.
We just kept going, Brent, without you.
Excellent. Good stuff. So I'm not sure what you got up to, but we talked about your first boat because I missed that. But
yep. About question 4, Brent. About how did she handle?
All right. So why don't we go back a little bit then? So you've talked about what's inspired you to go around the world. Can you just share that with me a bit again there, please?
We kind of didn't set off to go around the world. I mean, I know we sat there with you guys in the beginning and said, oh, we're off around the world. But, seriously, we didn't. We thought, look, we're just going to take each leg as it comes. Let's go from A to B, and if that's successful, we'll go on to C, etc., etc. And once you start, due to the trade winds and things like that, one just keeps going. We enjoyed each area, went to, let's go to the next and have a look.
Excellent. So I'm just going to bring up some slides here, and we can just talk a little bit about, I guess, the route that you took, which I think a lot of people will be really interested in. So first of all, I just put a few notes here on different years and where you ended up. So starting in Sydney Harbour, took delivery of the boat in Sydney, and then eventually crossed over to New Zealand not long after, right?
Yeah, we crossed over in the just before Christmas that year. Spent a year in New Zealand, getting used to her, putting a few extra things on it.
Like a water maker,
Wind generator.
wind generator.
And then and we fitted it out a little bit so we could bring our son on board, put a few little extra handles about and things like that to make life more comfortable for him. And then when the cruising season started the following May, we did take her to the South Island, and we decided to put copper coat on for an anti-foul, because we realized we'd be going through countries where we may not be able to lift her, or it'd be terribly expensive too. Alec decided he'd change the anchor from what originally came with the boat. So we put a Rockner on, which we were very happy about. He can talk about that later.
25 kilos, so 5 kilos heavier than the anchor which the boat came with. And the smaller anchor is just our spare anchor now.
Right, so essentially you did a bit of a shakedown, a heck of a shakedown from Australia to New Zealand across the Tasman, and spent a year prepping the boat for your larger planned journey from there.
We'll just briefly mention that. Well, the main shakedown was actually in New Zealand, a real shakedown. Being naive, we didn't realise the dangers we were in, but the worst weather we've ever had was in that first season in New Zealand. We got caught. We did a winter sail from Napier down to Wellington, and got caught in quite a big storm. But being very naive at the time, we didn't actually realise until we read in the paper the next morning we had over 11 metre seas and 60 knots of wind going into Wellington Harbour.
Wow.
We've never experienced anything like that since, thank goodness.
Wow. So
that really proved to us the boat could. She looked after us, because she really did. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to go back a little bit. After we took over the boat in Sydney Harbour, we actually cruised up to Queensland, far north as Bundaberg. Yeah. And we just started off with day sails, and then the odd night sail, and then so we got that took about 2.5 months.
Yeah.
And then we left Bundaberg and direct to Lord Howe Island, and then our first blue water across to New Zealand.
And from memory, you were planning to get a delivery skipper, but that didn't work out in the end. So you just found your own way.
Yes. We were waiting for the delivery skipper to come while sitting in Bundaberg. A window opened up for us to cross the Tasman. That's a sea you don't muck around with. So Alex said, "We're going." So the delivery skipper was left behind, and we literally we headed out from Bundaberg. But it all turned out well. One of our really good runs was across the Tasman that year.
And I'm not sure whether we touched on this while offline, but what's your background? I mean, you've obviously done a bit of sailing from little boats through to other cats, but Alec, you're a pilot, and you guys had spent some time overseas in professional roles.
Yeah, most of my life, well, from the age about 28, I was a full-time pilot, and did a couple of contracts flying out of Dubai and Muscat. But basically, no big wide-body jets, just smaller, Boeing 737s and Fokker Friendships. I'm mainly working for oil companies. And so we got to know the Arabian Gulf quite well, and obviously the Arab people. They used to have Arab co-pilots, and cabin crew were either Pakistanis or Indians, whatever. So we managed to mix with several different cultures over there.
Yeah, okay. So just interesting to know backgrounds, I think, before people jump on these big adventures like this. So we're going to have a main Q&A at the end, but there is a question here from Jenny I think it's relevant to what we just talked about. For the trip to New Zealand, which is essentially your first blue water passage, did you have other crew, or was it just yourselves?
No, we did have other crew for that one. Some friends came along who told us they'd done blue water. We later discovered that it wasn't quite what we thought, but they were wonderful people. great to have along, and that did help us. We were novices at this stage, so yes, we did have crew on that first leg.
Yeah. Excellent. So from New Zealand, you sailed back up, I think, to the top of Australia and then up and through to Asia, into Bali and other parts up there in 2009. And did you join one of the rallies up through there, or did you go on your own steam?
No, we're always late, so we went on our own steam. Yes, we did. We went to New Caledonia and Vanuatu, then back across to Australia. We did have crew with us back up to New Caledonia and Vanuatu, then they left, and from there on we were pretty much on our own until we got into the Mediterranean.
Excellent. And then I think you guys were one of the last sort of fleets of cruising boats to get up through the Red Sea before things got really nasty. And you've obviously had some experience in the Middle East previously, but what was that experience like sailing up through the Red Sea?
The Red Sea itself, as you can see from the photo, that's taken in Dubai. We went from India. It was the bad year of the pirates. Yeah, as you said, the last a lot of boats went. So the year before we'd actually sailed from India up to Dubai, where we left the boat for a season, then came back and went down the coast of Oman, calling in, and Yemen, calling in, and then into the Red Sea. The Red Sea is pretty amazing. Hard work, sailing wise. You have winds with you for the first, or behind you for the first third, and then on the nose for the other 2/3. But it was an amazing experience. You know, we had to be prepared to sit sometimes for 10 days in a little marsha, which is a harbour, waiting for the winds to drop down to 10 knots, and then we'd all leave.
In that case of 10 days, there were 14 yachts there, and the wind was blowing 20, 25 knots night and day. So every morning the batteries were 100% because we had the sunshine and the wind generator was going. And then the wind tends to die down to about 5 or 10 knots, and then the convoy was up anchors and we were away. And some boats motor sailed and some just motored. And price of diesel in that part of the world is not too expensive. So so we took 3 months to do the Red Sea. In actual fact, from Dubai to the Red Sea and to the Suez Canal, we took 6 months. And in the Red Sea, we dropped anchor 29 times.
How many times? 39 times?
29.
29, right.
Yeah, 29, yeah.
Yeah, wow. Okay. And I mean, did you have any, I don't know, close encounters or any concerns at the time?
We had one, Alec will tell you, we had one couple of, looking back, funny incidences. One was in the Gulf of Aden, the other one was in the Red Sea with the pirates. Well, they weren't pirates, but...
Yeah, okay, from the southern city of Sultan of Oman to a place called Salalah. It's a big commercial port there, a big transit port. And we just formed a little convoy with an English lady who had a 38-foot Moody mono. And we decided at night to have no headlights on, and we wouldn't chat on channel 16. We changed frequencies every day, and we had satellite communications, and we're in contact with the so-called anti-pirate headquarters in Dubai, and they would advise us if there's any activity. So one night we were sailing without the headlights on, and I could, on the AIS, I picked up a small freighter coming northbound, and of course we were going southbound, and he called up the coalition forces, and there's a corridor about 60 miles out to sea where the warships escort the cargo ships. And he called up and said, I have a contact about 3 miles off my starboard bow, and the helicopter came back and said, what sort of speed are they doing? He said, between 5 and 6 knots. Have they got nav lights? And he said, no. And then he said, okay, what's the longitude? And I was on the chart plotter then, and I said, Jesus, that's us. So then quickly changed frequency, because this is all on Channel 16, and said to the English lady, Wendy, turn left now, port, 90 degrees, and we're going out to sea now. And about 10 minutes later, the freighter called up and said, collision forces, the threat has now gone away. So I imagine he thought that we could have been pirates or so.
Wow. Well, glad you got that out on that one. So through the Red Sea, up through the Suez Canal, and then eventually up through to Malta and other parts of the region. And I think you even end up, was it the next year up and through the...
We went up into the Black Sea.
Black Sea, yeah.
Yes, we started, the first year we sort of did Israel, Turkish Cyprus, Lebanon, and then up into Turkey. And we went all the way up to Istanbul, poked our nose, went up the Bosphorus, poked our nose into the Black Sea, and then came back again. The following season we did, we went up into the Ionian, came back, did the Greek islands and everything like that. The third year we sort of smucked around in the Med, and then the fourth year when we were going to leave, we actually went to a talk. An American guy had written a new cruising guide for the Black Sea. So we were all ready to head to Gibraltar to cross the Atlantic at the end of the season. And we looked at each other after going to this talk and said, hey, let's do it. This is what cruising is all about, changing one's mind when you want to. So we did a lot of miles that year, but we went all the way back up to Turkey and into the Black Sea. You could count the cruising boats up there on one hand, very few, but it was the most amazing adventure up there. Incredible.
Yeah, we ended up in the Ukraine, in the Crimea, in Yalta, before the Russians took over.
Wow.
And went to Balaclava, and we actually moored in the Russian Black Sea sort of naval base, and they were very friendly. And we had a cruising permit, and we had to call every time we moved the boat, and they'd say on the radio quite often, "Good luck, Shamel." And we ended up in Odessa, and then we did Romania and Bulgaria.
Went up the Danube, and quite amazing adventure.
And then in North Turkey, we were going to Georgia, but we got behind time, so we decided to take the train, and we did Georgia and Armenia too, overland. Came back after a couple of weeks, and the boat was nice and safe, and I had a Turkish guy looking after it for me, and it was fine.
Yeah, excellent. Quick question here from Craig. I'm sure you see that. How far up the Danube can you navigate with the mast?
We went up the Danube about 5 miles, and then we left the boat in a little town there and took a hydrofoil another 30 miles up. The people whom we met who'd come down the Danube in their yachts had taken their masts down. So I would say you could go about 30 miles up to that I can't remember the name of the town we went to, but
before the first bridge.
So maximum 30 miles, I'd say.
I met one Canadian couple who actually wintered over in Berlin, and they came down the rivers and canals, all the way down to the Black Sea.
And so from there, you explored the Med for the next year.
Yep, we went back and we wintered over the boat. Yeah, we did. We went up into Albania and Croatia, and then Montenegro, Venice, went across to Venice for one season, and then we did Malta 5 times. We loved Malta. We went to Lampedusa, which was the island where all the refugees were meant to be taken. There wasn't one there. We went across to Tunisia twice
to haul out
the boat, which was really good. And then we started and we did Sardinia and Corsica through the Balearics and made our way to Gibraltar and then Sardinia in Spain before crossing the Atlantic.
Yeah, so the obviously the Atlantic took you over to the Caribbean, and that Atlantic crossing, I mean that was probably the longest ocean passage you'd done by that stage.
But yes, at that stage it was. That was 18 days for us. We had the trade. We actually dropped down to the Cape Verdes. We did from the Canaries to the Cape Verdes, and then we were waiting for a friend on another Seawind. He was a little bit late in coming, so we missed a really good week of the trades. We had a few days and had a good push, and then we got out there and lost the winds. So it was.
So we had to use a spinnaker day after day, night after night. But having said that, the spinnaker was very useful when we sailed from Thailand to Sri Lanka, and that took 8 days in total. And the first week, the wind didn't get below 8 knots and not above 12 knots. And we used the spinnaker night and day for a week, solid, and we averaged 6 knots.
Wow. But the Atlantic crossing was too light to use the
winds. We were able to use the spinnaker some of the time, but we were taking it up and down even at night. Was picking up the thunderstorms on the radar. But it was a very pleasant crossing. There was nothing. Yes, we lost the wind, and then it had come and it was light and things like that. But it wasn't a horrid crossing at all. It was,
and no traffic. We only
traffic.
saw, I think, about a maximum 2 ships on the LIS zone, and we saw a fridge.
And what time of the year did you do the crossing?
We did the crossing in January.
January, yeah, cool. Quick question, we might as well touch on Paul's asks here. What was your favourite location in the Med?
The Med, it depends what one is interested in. We're really into history. So we were sort of following the route of the Crusaders and where they went. So we just loved everywhere. We don't have actually one favourite place. The whole place is interesting. So that's why we loved Israel, we loved Lebanon, Malta, all the Greek islands, the Turkish islands, up in the Ionian. Croatia's amazing. It's another lovely one, place. But there's not one particular place. It's just the whole place in general. And you could always find shelter behind an island somewhere. It can be expensive in the summer if you're into marinas all the time, which we're not. So we were quite happy to, depending on which direction the wind was blowing, find an anchorage somewhere sheltered behind an island or in a lovely bay somewhere. No problems there.
So from the after the Atlantic crossing down to the Caribbean, and I think you ended up in the States not long after, did you? Or how long?
We did one full season going through the Caribbean, seeing a lot. We came into Barbados and we dropped down to Tobago and Trinidad. Then we worked our way up through the Windward Islands, missing a few, and then got to St. Martin, went to Puerto Rico where we picked up our American cruising permit, went out to the Turks and Caicos, and then into the States. Then we're now getting at the beginning of the hurricane season. So we spent a little bit of time in Florida because now was the time to get some new sails, which we ordered. And then once we had those, we headed up to Narragansett Bay, which is in New England. Rhode Island.
And you went up through the IntraCoastal Waterway?
No, we actually went up on the outside. Okay. On our return trip coming down, we did the ICW.
Right.
The following season, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Excellent. And how far north did you get there? You got right up to...
We got right up to Portland in Maine.
In Maine, right.
So we did
so we cruised around there for a few months, Cape Cod, and checked out the Pilgrim Fathers and Nantucket.
Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, Buck Island, and came through the Cape Cod Canal, which is, you have to wait till the tide is going to push you the right way, and then came down Long Island and East River, spent a few nights in New York, and then down the coast to the Delaware.
Cape May, and then up to Delaware.
Cape May, yeah. Through the Delaware Canal, there's the Chesapeake, spent a few weeks, and then down to Norfolk, Virginia, and that's where the ICW. And we're very fortunate that Seawind, there's fixed bridges down on that waterway, and if your mast is higher than 64 feet, you can't go. So I think our mast is 58 feet. Yeah.
So we were very fortunate, and with her draft and everything going down the ICW, we had to watch it at times, but it was fascinating. You only want to do it once. It's hard work because you can't sail. You've got to. That is a motoring one, but so interesting. Yeah.
Right. So back way down south, I guess down to Florida, and then you spent some time in Cuba in 2017.
Yeah, we went out to the Bahamas. We were very fortunate to meet an American who actually had lived out there. So we spent 3 months in the Bahamas, going around places where one doesn't usually, the normal cruises don't go. The Bahamas is stunning. It's beautiful. But then after that, yes, we headed for Cuba. We were given a month's cruising permit in Cuba. So we did the western. We came into Hemingway Marina on the top part of the island, went down the western coast and around the bottom to
Key Largo.
Key Largo. Then it was time to leave, so we went out to the Cayman Islands, and we met another New Zealand boat out there in the Cayman Islands, and they were actually stocking up to go back to Cuba because they'd enjoyed it so much. And this was one of those times we looked at each other again and said, hey, let's do the same, because we just loved Cuba. It was amazing. So we stocked up and went back to Cuba for another month.
Wow. And from there you made your way through the Suez Canal?
No, Panama. No, not at that stage. We actually we were on our way to Saint Martin. It was an absolute blessing we didn't get there, because that's when they had the 3 hurricanes pass through that season and wipe them out. We started to go there, but once we got to the passage after Cuba, we were going around the bottom of Cuba. We just couldn't do it. We were into headwinds and it was awful. So again, change of plan. We went back to the Cayman Islands and then off to Mexico, down through Belize, and down into Guatemala, and then up into the Rio Dulce and Guatemala, which we're now 24, 25 miles inland, where we hauled the boat and left her for the hurricane season. Went back after that and then we went through slowly through the Caribbean, doing all the islands. It was hurricane season when we were passing through, but boy, we watched the weather. We always had an alternative to run straight to Panama or down to the ABC Islands. So we did all the islands that we hadn't seen. So we've pretty much done the whole of the Caribbean. We worked our way down to Grenada, and then sat out the remaining of the hurricane season there before leaving the ABCs. And then we went to Colombia, onto the San Blas Islands, and then to Panama. Tell them what happened on the way to Panama.
Yeah, unfortunately, about a day and a half out from San Blas Islands, during the hours of darkness, we lost the rudder.
Right.
I think it could have been to just fatigue, or might have a bit of log or something, but we were surfing down waves about 15 knots, and it was quite windy, 35 knots, and going downwind. And yeah, so we had to lift the boat in Panama, and I decided to install 2 new rudders rather than just replace the one. And but this is all part of boating, and yeah, so that was another experience. And also, like I mentioned, that there's no problem handling the boat with one rudder, and although it was a bit difficult to use the autopilot, I soon discovered that with one engine, doing a bit of motor sailing and then engaging the autopilot was okay.
So through the canal and then down to French Polynesia, and then dotting your way back to New Zealand, no doubt.
That's yes, through the canal. We didn't go to the Galapagos. They've really put up the prices there. We passed through them, and the booby birds came out to join us, and we saw a lot of wildlife and things like that. But we just passed through them, and so it was a 28-day trip for us to get from Panama down to the Marquesas. Through the Marquesas, we spent a good month there, then through to the Tuamotus, which are again stunningly beautiful. Then onto the Society, you know, Papeete and Bora Bora, Moorea, those ones. So in total we spent just over 3 months in French Polynesia, and then we headed to Rarotonga. We were at horrible anchorage, but well, it's not our anchorage. You have to moor to the wharf there, but gosh, don't miss it out. It's beautiful. People are wonderful. Then we did a little diversion. We went to Palmerston Atoll. We were asked by the people in, we were going there, but we were asked by the authorities when we were checking out in Rarotonga if we would take a medical parcel there for them. So we said yes, we'd take a medical parcel. A truck arrived with not 1 box, but 5. So that was the guest cabin full. Then we had a young man wander down the dock and asked if any boats were going there because he wanted a ride home. So we said, yeah, after speaking with the harbour master, he said, yes, you can take him. The supply boat had stopped running. There'd been a horrible accident where a child had fallen off and drowned, so they grounded them. So we took him, and he didn't tell us he was building a house. So we had supplies for a house. We now had deck cargo, all covered under tarpaulins on the back. We had over a ton of freight, extra freight on that trip. But when we got there, the hospitality, because we'd done this for them, was unbelievable. They just so looked after us, and yeah, it was an amazing experience. And then we arrived in Samoa. We went up to Samoa. We arrived there during the measles epidemic, but we were fine.
So there 5 days, and
yeah,
it's time to leave.
And then we started down through the Tongan group. So we did all the islands, you know, Nui Tapatapu at the top, and yeah, worked our way down through the Tongan group before we set sail for New Zealand. Oh yeah, I think the grand finale, which was quite stunning. We stopped on Minerva Reef on the way back to New Zealand for a week due to weather.
Which reef?
Minerva Reef,
okay,
about 300 miles south of Tonga. Just incredible, beautiful. There were 18 yachts in there, and we were waiting for a weather window to come down to New Zealand.
So there for a week.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, there you go. So around the world in about 30 minutes. Well done, guys. That's a new record. So you did all this on a 38-foot sailing catamaran, the Seawind 1160. How did you find that boat for this purpose?
She was superb. I mean, as I said at the beginning, we were novices. We were learning as we went. A great boat for people who don't know a lot to start with. You don't need a great big floating hotel. If you can afford it, that's nice. But then your marina costs go up and your lifting costs go up and things like that. We just found, because most of the time it was the two of us, we had friends and family come and visit us, of course, in different places. But she was the perfect size. She really is.
And your son, Murray, for mobility reasons, the 1160 helped.
Oh, that's Murray's our shore manager, but that's him in Norfolk in Virginia when he was leaving us. It was winter time, you can see it. Poor thing, it was freezing. But the boat is perfect for somebody like him, somebody in a wheelchair, because it's easy.
In the background,
yeah,
on the side.
It's easy for him to get on and off. And then once he's on with those bifold doors that fold up, it's just ideal, absolutely ideal. There's plenty of room.
Excellent. Listen, we've got a whole bunch of questions here we might get to. We haven't done yet, so why don't we bring some of those up? Funny one here. Robin asks, well, first of all, refrigeration and freezer, you know, for provisions, was that sufficient? And did you miss your lamb?
We were surprised where we could get lamb. That was amazing. Not through Asia and things, but once we got to the Middle East, we could buy it. We didn't have it in Europe, but we had it in the Caribbean. We had it in the Caribbean.
The Caribbean went to the French supermarket and got 2 legs of New Zealand lamb, $20 each.
Wow.
So that was good. Refrigeration and other people who have come on our boat have been extremely envious of the refrigeration and the freezer space we have. But Alec was always saying to me, look, there are supermarkets in other countries. We don't have to overfill things. I tend to stock up for the pandemic type of. Yeah.
And Edward's got a question here. I'm interested to know what a reasonable monthly budget was for sailing around the world like you did.
What would a reasonable monthly budget be?
Well, a few years ago, we're looking at, in US dollars, say $100 a day. And that included airfare, say, home to New Zealand, say, once every 18 months or whatever. And just marina fees and basic living cost, etc. And then we had a bit of money in the bank, a reserve funds, just in case you have a major failure or whatever. And we discovered that by just renting at our house, that covered basically half our living cost.
Yeah, right. And you were staying out of marinas where you could. You say you're staying out of marinas where you could? Or did you
yes, absolutely. Yes, we only go into them when we need to. It's much nicer at Anchorage. It's much cooler because, as you can see, we were doing the tropics. So it's so much cooler to being at Anchorage than tied up in a marina. And you've just got a little bit more freedom. You can swim and, yeah.
And also, there's so much information in these cruising guides. And we went over a couple of times in Sicily. And there's something like 200 cruising yachts there. And come summer, the marina is just virtually empty. And we were paying 1,600 euros for a berth for 7 months, plus power. So that's quite reasonable.
Yeah.
Somebody's just asked about the cost again. So what did you say, a weekly cost? Weekly cost of 100.
100 US a day?
Yeah, 100 a week. 100 a week or day?
Yeah, $100 a day.
A day, 100 a day.
So 700 US a week, yeah.
Okay. There was a question earlier too from Paul about the duration to cross the Atlantic. Roughly how long did that take?
Atlantic crossing was 18 days, but we did go from, we did drop down to the Cape Verdes. And again, as I said, we lost the wind. People seem to be able to do it between 12 and 20 days. So we thought, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah. And how did you find the Seawind coping in the conditions that you were through?
She handles all conditions, light winds, strong winds. I only ever had one time when I wanted to get off in the middle of the night when it was pretty rough. But then this is the other thing, which on a trip like this, which I think one should always learn to do, we hove to. We just hove to until the weather passed over. And and then set off when it had died down. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons I learned early on, which Alec made me do, learn to hove to. And I think that's really, really good. And the Seawind hoves to beautifully.
Yeah, I've heard this before actually from some Seawind owners who've done some big crossings, that hoving to was some of the best strategies. Did you ever, in fact, there's some other questions here on this point, did you ever use drogues or sea anchors?
Never. We had them, never used them.
Really? Right.
We had the sea anchor rigged up between Australia, New Zealand, and New Caledonia, and then back to Australia, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we didn't after that. And no, we just heavy weather, third reef, and then half a jib. And we actually have on board, because we come from New Zealand, we've got to go for the Cat 1 requirements. We've got storm sails, which we never used.
But we also have, which a lot of catamarans don't, we ran, you call them lifelines?
Jack
stays from the back down to the front. And, you know, there's the odd time something happened with the jib or you had to go up and do something. And we definitely used them. I think it's a mistake that people don't always put them on. They definitely were really good.
And what about getting weather information in communication systems? Did you have sat phones, HF radio? How were you getting weather predictions?
Yeah, okay. We started off with a Icon HF radio, and that was good for, we had sail mail, and we're downloading forecasts from that. Also, you can tune into Australia and New Zealand frequencies to get download forecasts. You can talk to other yachts coming through the South Pacific. We had a cruiser's net, and we'd call in twice a day and pass on information, and you know which boats are behind you or ahead of you. And also I used to tune into the BBC for the news and sometimes music. And I even got a couple of frequencies for being an ex-pilot. I could listen to the aircraft flying around the South Pacific. In actual fact, I had a friend who was a captain on a 777 coming back from Japan to New Zealand, and I was talking to him on the HF, and we were sailing between Port Vila and Australia.
But then later on, we got the Iridium Go, like we're coming through the well, in the Caribbean and then coming through the Pacific.
Did you subscribe to any services like Predict Wind or any of those?
Yeah, yes, we would predict wind. Yes.
And did you find that a valuable thing to have?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, really good.
And you text on that and emails, and yeah, so that's good too. So some boats have both. Some maybe, I think the trend now is more sort of satellite communication, but
Excellent. And any other weather, heavy weather equipment or particular accessories that you wish you'd had on the boat?
I don't think we kind of also going for a smaller boat. We were able to spend our extra money equipping her really well. So there is nothing we actually lacked for. Alec will tell you, we did upgrade the solar panels in the States.
Yeah, the boat came with two 120-watt solar panels, total 240. So we upgraded to 4 sun-powered solar panels, and now we've got 1,000 watts, and we're a mini power station plus the wind generator, and the water maker was, of course, very useful.
Did you have a hydro generator on the boat? I've seen those more often.
No,
we discovered that by following the sun, and we got by without aircon, and we don't have a heating. But we did some places like in top of South Island. We wintered over there our first season, and we had frost on the deck. But we go to bed at night. We had electric blanket on for half an hour, turn it off, and then we had a couple of little fan heaters. It's a small area to heat, so we no problem there at all. And the other extreme, in the warm climates, if you're at anchor, there's always a bit of a breeze, and the big windows, and we got fans in the saloon and cabins. And in actual fact, the boat came with just one fan in the forward cabin, so I put another one in. There's 2, and we were fine. And at least 10 years on the boat, we haven't had the flu once. So it's a very healthy climate.
Yeah. And so you had fans, and you didn't have air conditioning on the boat?
no,
Right. Didn't feel you needed it?
nope.
We were told by American cruisers that you don't survive in Florida in summer unless you got aircon. And we proved them wrong. We're fine. As long as you got shade and you're at anchor. If you're in a marina, you're not getting the wind and the boat's not facing into the wind. And those big windows, you just open those, you get a nice breeze coming through and your fans are going. And so,
Just on that point, Alec, you actually had quite good shade covers made up from memory from the boom out over the...
Yes, we have. We
for storage.
yeah, we did put on hard. We changed the soft tops to hard tops in the States, and yes, and then we actually had a track put on the boom where we could slide a shade on there. So when we were stopped for a long period of time, a few days going into weeks somewhere, we put those up, and that was absolutely brilliant. Yeah, made a big difference.
A question here about the draft of the boat. Were you able to get in closer than monohulls often, and did you ever intentionally put the boat on the beach? A question from Tim.
Yes, we did intentionally put the boat on the beach in Darwin to clean her.
We changed it all in sail drives.
We changed it all, which was really good. We beached her there. What was the first part of that question?
Did you find you're able to get in closer, I guess,
yes.
and anchorages?
Yes, annoying some of the monos at times. Yes, you go, especially if, when we're in the Mediterranean, the wind was blowing quite hard and you could see there was a bit of shelter under the cliff. We'd sneak right into the front row. Yep.
Yes, the draft is good. But talk about the draft and I think the Seawind must be a fairly strong boat, but this is a little bit embarrassing. Coming down the waterways, the bridges open and close, and you've got to get your timing right. And especially at afternoon rush hour, because you could be sitting by a bridge for, say, 1 hour or even more. So we came through one bridge, and then I knew that I had to get down to the next bridge at a set time, and I was doing 8 knots. And the waterway's very shallow if you go off that little narrow channel. And I was following the markers, and then Anne said, "Look, there's another little green one over there." Too late, I just started turning, and it was indicating that there's a sandbank there, and I hit it at 8 knots. And the boat sort of went, so I was thrown forward, the bows sort of dug in, and then we just went flop. And I said, bugger. So, the engines are still working. So I just put the engines in reversed off, and then carried on and still made the bridge, just made the next bridge at night. And then the next day, we anchored that, started to rain and that night, etc. The next day I dived on the boat. I couldn't see any damage. And then shortly after that, we were hauled out, and I had a real close sort of inspection and no damage at all.
Wow. It sounds like sailing on Moreton Bay in Brisbane. Question here from, who is this from? Can't quite see the question person, but comments on reliability of the Yanmar motors, the diesels. How did you find those? And how frequently were you changing oil and so on?
The Yanmar motors, and how frequently were you changing oil?
The Yanmar 3YM diesels all change every 200 hours. I decided to adhere to that, and I got my own oil pump, and I even changed the filter every 200 hours too. And you do a lot of motoring. So each engine now has just over 5,000 hours, and there's no smoke, at all. I mean, the engine's going fine.
About the sorry, what about the? Did you have the 3-blade gory props?
Yes.
Yeah. How did they fare?
We lost one in the Med.
Right.
Don't ask us how, it just fell off.
It been in the boat for 5,000 miles, and it was just so I learnt my lesson there that I now don't let any so-called tradesmen handle my props anymore. So I went out and bought my own torque wrench, and I serviced my own sail drives now and changed the seals on the lower drive. And so since then there's no problem. So unfortunately around the world there's different standard of tradesmen, and one American guy said, you have a tradesman on your boat, and you soon see that he doesn't know much about your boat, and you know more about it than he does, especially if he owned a boat for several years.
The just on motors, I guess, around fuel. One accessing fuel in some of these remote locations, was that a problem? And the quality of fuel, were you having to use filters and so on?
Okay, fuel. Yeah, around the world, you get, the major petrol stations, Shell, BP, and Mobil, etc. And they can be in a lot of third world countries. Occasionally, we found some sort of very, black-looking diesel. But I got one of those fancy filters which take out the water. And anyway, if the marina is not used very much, I tend to go to the local service station with my jerry cans. And then I pour it into the fuel tanks on the boat through a filter. And some people in the old days, they use a chamois too. That's another possibility.
Mm. Question here from old friend Joe Sedinsky. Haven't spoken to for a long time. Joe's another amazing cruising adventurer. What sort of lightning protection? Did you have any lightning protection on the boat? And did you ever have any strikes or concerns?
We had one very close incident on the waterways where literally the water beside us smoked, but we were never hit. But after that incident, I got a bit nervous. And when we were in Florida, when we got back down to Florida, this was on the waterways, I've insisted we have one of those little lightning things put up on the mast. I have got no idea whether it did any good. Sometimes I think it's just good luck, but we weren't hit by lightning.
Yeah, that's a tricky one because you read a lot about it, and I don't think there's no device that can stop the boat being hit by lightning. But what we do in a severe storm, we tend to turn off various items, and but we have a standby handheld GPS and a standby compass and radio. We put it into the microwave.
Who I think is the one who's in regional WMA.
Excellent. Let's see what other questions we got here. Languages. How did you go with English?
English is spoken all around the world. We had no problems. If I was going to learn one language to do a circumnavigation, it would be Spanish. Had absolutely no problems anywhere. Very funny incidents understanding, but you can get by going around the world with English, no problem.
So that's Jeff, just earlier your Corsica a few times. What other sails did you have on the boat?
Brent, we can't hear you for some reason. It's gone all funny.
Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better.
Right. There's a question here from Jeff. What sails, you mentioned you had I think it was an asymmetric spinnaker, I take it. What other sails did you have on the boat?
Well, just the main and the jib, and on hindsight, in certain light winds, it would be nice to have a screecher, but we haven't got. We didn't have one of those, and that's about it. We got our standby storm sails,
Did you ever use the storm sail?
And we had to replace our sails after about 9 or 10 years, and we've done the standard rigging in the Caribbean. That's basically for insurance purposes. And there's another question I think someone was asking about the three main items you'd have on a yacht to go worldwide cruising. And I'd say number one would be the solar panels, a water maker definitely. What's the third one?
Good communication.
Communications, yeah. I guess these days, root and go, yeah. So that makes life easier because, a good chart plotter and, radar and sonar, of course, AIS, transponder, and then you've got communications, and that makes the blue water passages, very easy, actually. And it's more relaxing than coastal cruising by far. out there in the blue water, you're just on your own most of the time, and day after day, and good fishing, plenty of tuna, wahoo, mahi mahi.
And given that you're living on the boat, how did you find it storage-wise for personal items and provisioning and so on?
No problem whatsoever. Plenty of storage room, plenty of room for provisions, very comfortable. Yeah.
And one of the best galleys we've seen,
yeah,
storage-wise.
Yeah, storage-wise, we've got more room than most boats, even some larger than ours. We've got more room. Yeah. Galley.
Question here, it's come up a couple of times, and Craig has mentioned it again, insurance. How did you go about insuring the boat? Or
yes,
did
we did have insurance, yes. Right from the day we bought the boat, yeah. We've had insurance the whole way around. And it was used when we lost the prop in the med. They came to the party, absolutely no problems.
And that was a blue water policy that we're using, or a different zone?
That was Pantanius.
That was with Pantanius. We have changed companies along the way, unfortunately, because we weren't covered for the rudder, but that was because it fell under the copay.
Yeah, unfortunately, insurance is becoming a bit of a problem because the premiums are going up, the co-pays are going up, and that I think was mainly because the big hurricane in the Virgin Islands and St. Martin. And I think we're the private cruiser. I think we're subsidising these charter fleets because everybody's seen the photographs, and we went there and there were hundreds of charter boats upside down in these bays and completely smashed up. And they were just loaded onto barges and then unloaded on this little sandy island in St. Martin, and a big digger was just smashing them up. Yeah. And so that's a problem, is some cruisers only have third party and some don't have any insurance at all.
It depends on your budget, but we did build it into ours.
Yeah.
And back in New Zealand at the moment, our insurance is it's quite reasonable, actually.
Yeah.
As long as we just cruise around New Zealand and not more than 250 miles. Once you go blue water, they tend to increase the premiums and the co-pays and etc. And then, if you get caught out in a hurricane, there's no cover.
Yeah. One last question here from Chris. Did you carry paper charts the whole way, or?
We started off with paper charts. I like a paper chart, and I do like it for the big passages.
We get those.
The passage charts. But as time, in certain places, like going up the coast of Australia and places like that, and through Asia, up the Malacca Straits and that, yes, I like the paper charts are good. The chart plotter would have been adequate. But then as time went on, it was, some places we couldn't get them. So it was just using the chart plotter. Which we have, Navionics Gold, no problems whatsoever.
And also we have a standby handheld GPS, and then these cruising guides, if you get a good one, are fantastic. You come into little bays and check into countries, and they tell you where to anchor. Where's the marina, roughly the charges, where's customs, immigration, where's the port captain, supermarkets, and and they have a diagram of the harbour.
With depths and things like that. So.
And what about, were there any particular or standout websites that are a good reference point for cruisers?
Well, Noonside, I think, is about number one.
Yeah. Yeah, Noonside.
No, just each area you go into, you find the local website for that area.
Yeah.
And by the local, like in the Med, there's a excellent cruising guide for Turkey and one for the Greek islands and so on. And
I think we used our guides more than actually going online and checking things, because in a lot of places it was very hard to get online. that's definitely improving.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground there, and we'll wrap it up. Now we're on the hour. So thank you very much, guys. One last question. When this is all over and we're allowed to go outside again, what's next for you guys?
We haven't finished yet. We haven't seen enough of the Pacific. We need to lift her and redo the bottom. We haven't anti-fouled for 12 years.
Copper coat.
The copper coat.
Wow.
So, which we've been absolutely thrilled with. It's really worked well for us, but we did it ourselves in the first place and we did it properly. So we'll lift her and redo that, and we'll do that after the winter, and then sail a bit of New Zealand. But we'd still like to go back and see more of Tonga, and we haven't done Fiji yet.
And even maybe sail around New Zealand.
Yeah.
Sometime. That could be hard work though. That's bad. No, the boat has now done 60,000 miles, which is, it's like staying around the world twice.
Yeah.
And she's still in very good condition.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for your time, guys. I'm so happy to see you back here. We sort of lost touch with you there a while back, and it's just an epic journey that you've done, and really inspirational for a lot of people, and particularly the fact, you don't need a 50 or 60 footer to go and do these sort of things. You've done it on a much more boat achievable for a lot more people. So if anyone wants to see, I'll just bring up the screen here again, explore, there we go, explore the blog of Alec and Ann. I think that's come up now. I'd really recommend diving into their blog, shamelsadventures.blogspot.com. I mean, you can spend weeks going back through some of this stuff, but it's really interesting, and we'll put some links up there in the YouTube afterwards as well. So thank you very much, guys. Appreciate the time, and please keep us posted. Keep the blog up for your future adventures, and stay in touch.
Well, thank you, and everybody stay safe. You don't have to do the full circumnavigation. I mean, I'm sure everybody's got a lovely country to just explore themselves, and you don't need a great big boat to do it in.
Yeah, well said. Excellent. All right, guys. Thank you. And
okay, cheers.